Production sound mixer, Mark Ulano. The culture is so true to the time. The time is true to the culture, and that's thanks to the Osage clothing consultant, Julie O'Keefe. And then there were more clothes to make, and that's where they tapped a well-known costume designer, Miss Jacqueline West. And we like to get the casting right, especially in a story that's important as this, featuring Indigenous people, and that's thanks to the Indigenous casting consultant and director, Rene, Haynes. But then we need Leonardo DiCaprio, and we need Robert De Niro, so then we get another casting director to do that. So guys, shout it out for Ellen Lewis. That's in charge of pushing all the money, making sure Marty shows up on time. He did his job today very well. We love him. Producer Daniel Lupi. She's cut it all together. She's worked with Marty quite a bit. She is the most winning woman in the Best Editor category at the Academy Awards. And she's the prettiest lady in the room tonight, legend editor Thelma Schoonamker. Now I'm gonna stretch for a minute, gotta make this one big. So listen, I just gotta preface it with this. When I go to my church, my cinema house is my praise and worship area, and I believe in the cinematic Holy Trinity, and that is the Father, Son, and Holy Scorsese. 26 movies and narrative features, and if I asked all of you to shout out your favorite, you would all, it wouldn't sound good, because we would all name different movies. And that is, very few filmmakers can do that. He's a legend, director, writer, producer, 21-year-old Martin Scorsese.
Very nice Saturday.
Feels good, right? Yeah, good to see you, sir. It's a hero. Killers of the Flower Moon. You know, every time I think I'm gonna ask you in front of everyone here. 26 movies in, I'm guessing there's 26 more to come, because you're still surprising us. Not many people can do that with this depth of work, and you did the homework to make sure you got this story right, because it's such an important story. Can you talk about first just being attracted to telling this story, getting it right, and instituting all these great people that are here to help you bring it to life? That's for you, Mr. Scorsese. When did you learn about this story and talk about bringing it to the big screen?
Well, I was given the book, David Grann's book, back around 2016. I think we were about to do Irishman. We were out in Los Angeles, and I was thinking, after reading the book, I was thinking of doing this first. But Irishman, because of the CGI and the youthification process, Niro and I, we looked at each other, we realized Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Bob De Niro. If we wait 2 years, it's even going to be harder. Well, it'll be harder, even more expensive, who knows? He said, no, all right, we better do this. So, in the meantime, Eric wrote that I'm working on the script. And I was drawn to it. On the one level, the title itself, The Flower Moon, having come off silence and the nature of the moon, the feminine nature of the moon. In the case of silence in terms of Christianity, the emphasis by Endo of the feminine nature of Jesus, the nurturing. And that was interesting, but then you juxtapose it with the killers of the flower moon. And the title seemed to really conjure up images, not images, but this universe that I sort of slipped back into when I was younger, and this Western genre was so important to me, all sorts of Westerns. And of course we know the Western, when I was growing up, ended with the Wild Bunch, with Peckinpah. And so it's different, it's a very different situation now. But in any event, I was drawn to that. Well, make a long story short, we tried to get a script from the book, beautifully written, David Grann's book. And the idea was Leonardo DiCaprio to play Tom White. As we worked on this over a period of a couple of years, I tried from every possible angle to do something that I hadn't already seen, that I would be interested in directing. And this is not denigrating the story in any way or the writing of the book. It just seemed to me that when the Bureau of Investigation at that time comes into the small town of Fairfax or whatever, and they try to uncover who did what, I always kept thinking to Eric, I said, it wasn't a matter of who, it's a matter of who didn't. So I wanted it to be everybody's collective guilt, including ours, And so ultimately, meeting with the Osage, that was another big issue. I said right away, I'd had some experience with Indigenous and Native American reservation out in Pine Ridge back in 1974, and it was a traumatic shock. And I was too young, I didn't quite understand it, but I never forgotten the poverty and the anger and the desperation and the sadness of it. And it stayed with me for years. Even here too, in New York, I think it was the Holland Tunnel, it used to have a stencil above it that says, wheels over Indian trails. And as all the cars were going in, and that thing stayed up for years until they finally washed it away. But I'm going to get to the point now. And anyway, all this was something in my mind for many, many years, and I felt a sense of obligation to it after what happened in the 70s. In any event, I said the first thing I have to meet the Osage and see what they want to do with this, and which we did. We went there a number of times. One time, the people at Grey Horse gave us a very big dinner, like 300 people, and members of the community got up and spoke. And don't forget, these are people who are still members of the family that you see in this picture, the Burkharts and the Roans, the Roan horses, and so many others. And so it's an extremely sensitive situation. And I wanted to get it right by them, but I also wanted to get the story right, And during that time, a number of people got up and talked about the situation between Ernest and Molly. And don't forget, I said it wasn't just the evil villains. Basically, Ernest and Molly were in love. And that struck me, saying, well, if he's in love, and if he's maybe doing all these things, and yet she stayed with him until after the trial. Even the FBI guys, the Bureau Investigation guys, it's in David's book, they say, she's still there. She's in the courtroom, she's still with him. What is going on, And what is going on is that they're in love. And how has that played out? And so ultimately we took the script as far as I could, coming from the other angle, outside in. And Leo and I looked at each other a week later and he said, where's the real heart of the story? So the heart of the story is that they're in love. He said, then I should play the other part, Ernest. And I said, yeah, that would break it. I said, because we took it as far as I was concerned, took it to its limit from the other angle. It was good. It's just that I wouldn't have interest in directing that. I'd like seeing that, you know, the police procedural, etc. So I said, you realize what that means? We're going to go in now and take this middle of the script and rip it inside out. I said, yeah. And so we decided to stay with the project and rework the entire thing for the next year and a half, and that's what we wound up doing.
And you succeeded. Very well done. Thank you. Madam Thelma. I mean, listen, Raging Bull, The Aviator, The Departed, pacing in Scorsese's movies are always impeccable. But what I love so much about Killers is that you're unafraid to let the audience feel how treacherous and torturous this whole ordeal was for the entire Osage tribe and community. But also aren't afraid to let what I call Leonardo DiCaprio buffoon face, like be in a scene that actually makes us laugh, because I've never seen him be like play like a buffoon in a movie, and you were willing to go there. You've worked with him for so long with Scorsese. How did this differ from any other project that you've worked with him on?
Well, of course, the wonderful richness of getting to understand something about the Osage culture was a great gift. So rich, and will be with me for a long time. So that was the main difference. But I think the way that Marty wanted to let people absorb the characters, so that the scenes are a different pace maybe than some of the other films. And people have been telling me recently how much they love that. They love that we settle in with a scene like the first dinner between Molly and Ernest. They love that. And I think that was one of the big pacing differences in the film. The great challenge, of course, was to help figure out how to get the love story interwoven with the rest of the film. And you got tremendous help from Molly, from Lily and Leo, right? And during the shooting.
During the shooting, actually, I kept reworking the script with Lily and Leo and the Osage that were working with us, and Marianne Bauer was keeping it in order for me, because there were so many duplications, repetitions, confusions, so many things that we had to condense, so many things from transcripts that I wanted to use, transcripts that happened after the fact, you know. And so it really was organic. It just, to the very end, the last scene with De Niro and DiCaprio in the jail was written the day before.
Was it? But, you know, I think the way the actors were working with Marty and Leo's wonderful improvisation after he's in bed with Molly and she says she can't sleep and he's away too much and he tells her he loves her. And then when she kisses him and wants to make love and he says, oh, you want to wake the kids up. Is that an improv?
Yeah.
So, it's a wonderful, but it captures their love. It's a wonderful improv, and of course I've worked on many movies of Marty's with fantastic improv, which I love to cut. There wasn't that much in this one.
I'm getting to the point where improv has been so confused as a word. It's not really improvisation, it's a behavior. And if the people are together and they're really working together. I've been in situations where people are not going to work together, and you feel it, you see it. Here, they don't improvise, they behave.
And when we had the first screening for the leaders of the Osage Nation, there were 6, I think, is that right? Something like 6 people. The chief turned to Leo at the end of the movie and said, you made a human being out of him. That was stunning. I mean, when you consider the horrible things that happened. So I think what Marty and the actors were doing throughout the shooting and writing and rewriting was really critical. And then, of course, he wants to go back to her when Brendan Fraser blows up the trial, and he goes out into that big field with her, and they meet. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to go back to her, and Marianne told me he actually spent the night there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she made him come back home, she says, and they go straight to go.
Yeah. That was a wonderful thing to be working in the movie.
Let's skip the line and actually go to Mark here. Again, has worked on Quentin Tarantino films, so many different movies on your resume, and this movie that has, and this is a big shout out also to the people that aren't on this panel. Jack Fisk, the production designer that like built a town in the middle of Oklahoma, cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto, and the late great Robbie, who did the music for the film. And all that gets mixed together with a talented guy named Mark, who finds the sounds and finds the dialogue. What was so challenging about this project for you, having worked on so many others that are different?
Each project is its own, this journey of discovery. And in here, we were, my first mission is to discover the intent. What's the idea? And how do we use our instrument to manifest that idea? And there was great clarity here because of Marty and Leonardo. This was our fourth project together. So there was a lot of sort of nonverbal communication. It was on the page. It was in the selflessness that I experienced on the crew. There were many people there who were friends and had collaborated with in the past. So like musicians, we had this sort of, just love of being there. And so to find what that intent was, actually it was the easiest it's ever been for me on a project. It was self-evident. Leonardo disappears into his character, which is, truly an acting, feat of genius.
Yeah, definitely one of the best things he's ever done, which is hard to say as you're comparing him to himself at this point, but it's a completely new character.
So not a challenge. Let's say just it was an enormous opportunity to use my instrument to try and support Marty's intent and how that was communicated to our characters and their manifestation of that. So it was very special.
Thank you. Daniel, first time you worked with Scorsese, I think, you signed up pretty quickly and said, okay, I'll work with the guy. What has he done before? Looked at all his
I kept
projects.
asking him about schedule.
Well, actually, that's good. How long was this shoot? And how challenging was it to wrangle something like this that is very big, sprawling budget and also has the biggest names, trying to get schedules together on the actors, and everyone must have been, I don't envy you at all, but can you talk about this first experience working with a legend like him?
I came on after you stopped with Paramount.
That's right, Paramount backed out after we decided to change the approach to the story and go with Ernest. And they had loved the original script, and when I brought the first draft of the newer version, understandably, I mean, they weren't enthusiastic, and I pointed out, no matter how many times you say this, like if you do your own films and you show a rough cut to somebody, you never know what they perceive. You can talk about all the problems and all the sort of, there's a rough cut, don't look at this, don't look, and then they see the movie when it's finished and says, wow, what a difference, and you hardly change anything, you just finished it. So they looked at the script and they said, we're not enthusiastic, I said, well, I told you, this version is just the beginning. And then what we're gonna do every day is work on it and go through and work and work and work and change scripts. And they had to back out. Understandably too, they just couldn't have the enthusiasm for it. They came back in though, right?
Correct. So what happened was, we started in June, and it was in the middle of a pandemic, and basically we were, prepping the movie, and Marty was working on the script, and you were working with Adam Sumner, who's an amazing AD.
Yes, he's
Who, all that background with Marty was great. So we basically, you know, Apple comes involved. They kind of agree to the number. We push shooting a couple of times because of a pandemic. Right?
Yes, yes.
And then we get to Oklahoma in January and we start shooting in March. And in terms of the schedule, Marty, you kind of were on schedule.
Okay. We were on schedule on Aviator too. 90 days, 90 days. All right, and people think Scorsese goes, no, we're on schedule. Okay, a couple of other pictures went over. But this was not, we were on schedule.
That was the nicest way to the best movie answer of all time. I loved it.
One of the problems that we all had was the issue of we kept pushing and pushing because of COVID and stuff, and then of course we wound up shooting, and Oklahoma was a great place to shoot. The only thing is, I would advise being very careful. The summer months are extremely hot. There was a lot of the scenes were done at 110 degrees. Actors wearing three-piece suits, the Native Americans wearing three-piece plus blankets. There were some days that were extraordinarily difficult because of that, but we had no choice.
Correct. And as you said, we shot on schedule.
Yeah, we did.
And we ended about 100 days later.
About 100 days, I think. I don't want to get further into those numbers. Was it scheduled for 98 or something? We went for 93, maybe 98, and we went over 2 days.
100 well days spent.
And then what we did was we finished in September, and then we came back the following January, and we shot in your old high school.
Cardinal Hayes High School, that's the radio show at the end. It's got a theater.
Right, and then we went back to Oklahoma in June to shoot the large pullout. And the reason we didn't do it originally was because COVID was getting even worse.
Getting worse, we couldn't.
And so we literally were like, you know what, we're out of it, and we'll come back when COVID. So that was it. Good first experience.
Ellen and Rene, one thing that I hear a lot, and I'm a big advocate for diversity, everyone knows this about me, and I love what I see in this movie, and I love seeing Indigenous people put in roles that don't necessarily call for Indigenous people in other movies. And one of the excuses I hear often is, I can't find any Indigenous actors, out there. So can you just dispel that real quick? There are so many available, and then just wrangling everyone together, especially Lily Gladstone, which I knew about that band before everyone else knew about the band. I saw certain women, she's great in that movie, but she kills it in this as well. Please.
Right, I had worked with Rene on a previous project called Godless, limited series, and so I knew that Rene knew about the Indigenous actors, and that everything had to be authentic because that is how we do all the projects and that's how we approach it. So I called Rene immediately and said, I hope you're going to be available and that we can do this and make, all of your depth of knowledge. And we started early, and Rene started sending films to me so that I could familiarize myself. And Lily was somebody who Rene, of course, knew well. And again, we're in 2019, so we're before the pandemic has started. And Rene had said to me about Lily and watching A Certain Woman, and I had seen the film. So it was great because very early I was able to say to Marty, said, okay, well, we have to worry about Molly. And said, I think we're gonna be okay, but we're gonna be looking, but I think we're gonna be okay. So what a relief, and what a gift that Rene, knows this community so well, and the wonderful actors. We keep saying this. I mean, we did these open calls in Oklahoma that were amazing, and the Osage and everybody in Oklahoma, but they're amazing Indigenous actors. These are not unknown people.
I think that we had about, I don't know, maybe 63 credited characters in the film that were Indigenous, and only about 14 of them were actors that I had worked with previously or had cast previously. About 39 of those are completely new discoveries from those open calls, which were immensely successful. We've actually auditioned some of those actors since then, you know, for other things. And I mean, the Osage community showed up for our open call, but then they really delivered on the screen.
There's one person I want to point out. There's a scene in a roundhouse where they're going to send Barney McBride to London. I mean, no, Washington. We're going to London. Oh, okay. There's the guy who plays Chief Bonnycastle again.
Yancey Redcorn.
Yancey Redcorn. And the guy next to him, the big guy, is Everett Waller. And at one point he started speaking. I said I needed a reaction of the people to what Yancey was saying. I walked off set for a second and I hear this incredible speech being made, and De Niro came out and said, "Do you hear what's going on in there?" And I look, and it's Everett, and he's giving a rousing speech to the people I was going to photograph. And I ran back in. We started shooting him, but I said, "I need you sitting down. Can you do it sitting down?" And so what you see in the film, he makes 2 long speeches, impromptu,
Completely unwritten.
in which he talks about, you know, we rode over our dead babies. If the Osage are out there dying, I say, go out there and die with them. Don't let them die alone. And we're sitting there. This guy's amazing. And then he finds, you know, we never asked for the great life. We just asked for life. We just asked for life. So he speaks for everyone. And we just let him run. So that's the kind of thing. He's a pretty big guy.
Well, that party, and when we had the open call, I was in the room taping him. You know, he came in, and I got a little frightened.
So this one maybe, I don't want to put it badly, but he might be difficult. I said,
And
okay.
what about Black?
Well, Blackie's not Osage, but he seemed to be Osage. No, he's not. But he's a fireman, Blackie Thompson. He's an actor now, but he was a fireman. He is an actor now. No, but the thing about, that is the guy you said he could be a problem. But I knew that. I had that first experience on Pine Ridge where everybody was like that. I didn't know, I quite honestly didn't think I was going to get out there alive in 1974. And I'm a New York kid from, you know, what am I doing there? But Everett's that way. That's why I say he's tough. And I said, go ahead, go get him. And we just let him rip and used every frame of that.
And his language is so poetic, and he sort of massacres the English language in such a beautiful way. And he's a lawyer. He represents the nation before the Supreme Court and things like that.
And when we saw him after he saw the film, it was very moving. We embraced, and he said, he had tears in his eyes. He says, "I wish my mother had seen this." And this is a big guy.
And Molly is not Osage.
It's Blackfoot and
Nez Perce. And she's from Seattle, but she learned the Osage language so beautifully that the woman coaching her, Janice Carpenter, said, "She sounds like my mother." So few people speak Osage anymore because the children were taken away from the family, sent to schools, not allowed to speak Osage, cut their hair, which is horrible. They don't cut their hair. And she just captured the Osage so beautifully.
Julie and Jacqueline, 2 very simple questions. What did you draw from for inspiration for the Indigenous costumes, particularly Cara Jade Myers, like sachet, like dress like that is just like killer all throughout the movie? And are you going to release a line of Robert De Niro goggles? Because I think that one really bad. Good line of clothing coming out soon.
All of the costumes, really, we relied on research. Beautiful research that Marianne Bauer started even before I came on, and then I'm an art historian, so I love research. It's my favorite part of starting a movie, of actually crawling in and getting to live in another time through photographs. And what was novel about this project is that the Osage were the only people, aside from maybe the royal family in England, who could afford to make home movies at $1,800 a minute. And the home movies were absolutely revealing of how rich they, not just economically, but how rich their lives were. Not only how they dressed, but the things that, all their accessories, their airplanes, their cars, and then we get to, look at how they got dressed when they got in their cars, when they flew their planes, how they, dressed for archery, for golf, how their children dressed. And they also loved taking family portraits because the family was so important to them. So I could rely on, for the blankets, actual blankets from the time made by Pendleton. All I had to do was send these archival photographs to them and they would reproduce them perfectly, like the actual blankets that Molly wore, that her sister wore, that Lizzie Q wore. And I went from there. It was just all about the research and making it authentic. And then reading the script, this beautiful script that was pretty finished when I came on. And I read it like about 7 times till I knew the characters. And then what I do, and I try to do on anything I'm working on, is take them shopping in that period. And they dress themselves. When you're dressing somebody from the inside out, you know the choices they're going to make. And that's how I approached it.
When I came on board, it was in March, and so Jacqueline had all of these different closets that she'd really set up. But when I walked into the office, and of course, for Osages, there are many different ways that you can wear a blanket. A man is four different styles, depending on the life event that's happening to you. And for a woman, you can choose between blankets and shawls depending on the weather. But it depends on what you're doing. If you're going to go do business in town, you may wear it one way. If you're going to go to church, it may look different. If you're at a funeral, you're gonna wear it, as you were seeing with even the little girl that, when Lizzie Q dies, and you see these black shawls they have on, which were actually known as Osage meats. And in a lot of these trunks within my own family, and you would open it up and you'd see all of these French cut jet beads that would be in rows. And the gossip was always within our tribe was basically, you can tell the wealth of that person by how many rows of beads are going down the back of that shawl, and they're putting them on and going into town. But what I was struck by when I came in to Jackie's studio was the thousands and thousands of photographs that she had. And the thing I loved best when I saw what she was going towards with the sisters was that you have, in Lizzie Q, so you have Lizzie Q, who is she didn't grow up needing money. We were hunting. She came off the Buffalo Trail and basically hunted, and then we survived. Then you have a situation, we moved from Missouri. We chose that place where we are because buffalo came there, because there was tall 6-foot grasses with all these minerals under the ground, and there was a water source. We had no idea that later on the government would come in and kill all the buffalo. So that's what we're thinking of, the survival. Then you look at children being taken away to these military and missionary schools. And they're coming back. And the thing it is most striking is that you think that you have a person who's native to a country that is taken out and made an immigrant in their own lands. And so you have first speaking English children coming back who have not been allowed to speak their language. And they're helping the parents survive, just like we see today with immigrants that come over into our lands. And then you see how Anna, who's the oldest, they now have this life forced on them. So Jackie takes her and she puts her in this contemporary clothing. She's decided to commit to that, and she's moving forward. And most of the time for women, it's for safety. We're trying to survive. And so you see Molly, she's decided to stay traditional. She's going to show herself in these clothes and represent to the world in her tradition. Then you see Rita and Minnie, and they have contemporary clothing on, but they still have this piece.
For the for Leo and Bob and others was Blood on the Moon with Robin Benjamin and Robert Preston, which I just did an intro for TCM for this.
And the goggles are under your chairs right now. Final question to you, Mr. Scorsese. I believe in calls to action. We witnessed today destruction of people. We also didn't see what came after. Unless you're familiar with the story, you don't know that when Robert De Niro's character dies, the Osage went to his funeral to mourn him, and he murdered them all. There's a call to action here, and I want you to share with us, what do you want people to take from this movie and this experience for you?
Well, for one thing, the point of telling the story through the couple, through the marriage, this is the most intimate, in most cases, it's the most intimate relationship anyone could have. And there in the very secret intimacy of the kitchen and the bedroom is this strong love and trust and betrayal all at once. And how certain kinds of characters, in this case of Ernest, who appeared to be a very weak man, could slowly slip into this corruption. I do think, when I said it isn't who did it, who didn't do it, and kind of it's all of us in a sense, in terms of one culture coming in from Europe. And so, in a way, spirituality, okay? So that's where the corruption sets in, and how to make our lives easier, because we gotta eat, and we have to support families, or we just have to live. We let things happen. And I think that's a lesson throughout history. It's just a matter of saying, oh, this happened 100 years ago. We're shooting there, and it's 1921. For me, 1921, when I was 18 years old, 1921 was only a few years ago. And all of a sudden, it's 100 years. All right. So that people think it's a period piece. To me, it wasn't that much of a period piece. I saw people behaving the way I grew up seeing some people behaving, and how a whole nation could go that way. That's another issue, and it's always to be alert, and to speak out and to act against this kind of thing where you feel yourself becoming complicit. People get tired. It's understandable. You have to live. You have to feed your family. You get tired, so you accept certain things. But this is the great danger in life.
The Messenger. This is Daniel Lupi having an influence on me about schedules. They have to go catch a flight, so please don't rush the stage. I have to get them off, or I'm going to get beat up backstage. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again.